This is part 2 of First Aid Spray's full Resident Evil Requiem spoiler podcast. Please listen first to part 1 to hear us discuss every location in the game and the gameplay. I don't even know how to approach this one. There is lots to talk about here. So I guess we'll chop it into halves and then kind of open the floor to the endings and all the questions and stuff like that. And hopefully some of you guys will help me try and make some of sense of what we've played through. In many cases, multiple times, and don't feel any the wiser. So as a bit of a Cliff Notes version, I guess, Alyssa Ashcroft is murdered 8 years before the game takes place, and she hides a file in Renwood Hotel. Grace, now an FBI agent, is sent there because of the spate of mysterious deaths, which I presumably is Raccoon City Syndrome related, which is Leon is also investigating as a sufferer of this. So is Sherry Birkin, and who knows who else. Grace gets scooped up by Victor Gideon, who is a former Umbrella employee and kind of sycophant to Spencer. Don't know if we go as far as to call him a right-hand man, but I don't really know what their relationship particularly was one way or the other, but he certainly looked up to Spencer. And he believes that Grace is the key to... He and Zeno believe that Grace is the key to Spencer's final weapon, which is buried at the bottom of Raccoon City, Elpis, and they need her to unlock it. Meanwhile, the Connections have scooped up Umbrella's bits and pieces since the dissolvement, and they had a hand to play in that, partnering with the US government, putting them out of business, and have kind of moved in where Umbrella were, and are continuing Spencer's research on cloning silver-haired girls in the orphanage in the 90s and 80s to look for this key. And Grace is implied, not actually, Grace is said to be one of these clone girls, and in fact isn't Alyssa's daughter. Except towards the end of the game, we find out that that is not true. And the reason Alyssa was murdered is that Spencer gave her hints that he had turned over a new leaf and maybe regretted what he'd done. And Elpis perhaps is not that. And in the presumably good ending of the game, canon ending of the game, you don't know for sure. Elpis turns out to be an antiviral which cures Raccoon City Syndrome. Victor Gideon believes that actually this is for the sake of anarchy, to level the playing field style kind of situation. But no, everyone's cured now. Victor Gideon becomes the nemesis, and the Hound Wolf Squad show up for some reason. The BSAA are also in the game. We don't really talk about what's going on with them in the US government, but they are here. Chris is mentioned, and there's some other stuff. So let's talk about the first half of that, I guess. Renwood Hotel to the water treatment facility. What did everyone think about the story of the sort of more Grace-focused half of the game? Steve, let's start with you.
Definitely the most interesting part for me. You know, the second that Zeno shows up, my interest waned a fair chunk. Like trying to figure out the mystery as to why they wanted Grace. And this file saying she's a genetic match with whatever they're looking for. So the fact that that exists to me implies that she's not just a normal girl, as Spencer says. That just point it out there. Some people are mad that Alyssa's died. I'm like, I hate to say it, someone's got to at some point. Some characters have to die. Is it my main from Outbreak? Really, Capcom? Cheers. But also, like, at least it gave us Grace. Like,
that's my thing as well. I've said this multiple times, but she's way more important dead. She's way better off dead and important to the plot than just out in the ether.
Yeah.
Another Resident Evil character that's a question mark. I'll take this over that.
She is the most pivotal Outbreak character, bar none. She's done something even Stars couldn't do, where they tracked down Spencer and had a bloody interview and then got given a child. You know, that's significant. I appreciate the first half of the story because it's like the flashback is clearly a botched attempt to either get Grace or get both. Well, kill Alyssa and get Grace. But since the hooded man is already dead at that point, he shot, fall down, burned up. Grace gets away, then lives presumably, and the next 8 or so years joins the FBI, is traumatized. The bit that gets me is how the FBI must be compromised, or at some point in the US government has to be, to like send this agent with this trauma into this location. And it is specified in a document or a screen with like either Victor's plan or Zeno's plan that this is part of their plan, is to plant a body to get Grace there. Right? Mm-hmm. So this is all an elaborate trap, at least in the present day, to get her under their thumb and get analysed so that she can be the key and then used. All right? What were they doing with Emily and like Marie? Were they just trying to duplicate Grace, make their own key? Is that the general idea? Because it's not very clear. I think they're doing that intentionally, and I know we're going to probably have a debate about whether this was written by AI. I think they're trying to go for that not everything is spelled out approach, not too dissimilar to like your Souls games and the like, you know, where the fans have to put together the mystery. There's bits and pieces, obviously. But yeah, the initial hook of Grace being taken is fine. Leon kind of, if he wasn't in Elbridge at the time, he wouldn't even be in the story, which is crazy to think about because of how much he actually has. You know, he is the means of Grace enabling to free herself, handing her a gun, saving her life, basically giving her the focus, and then she meets Emily, and then he's the one who picks her back up after Zeno has been basically trying to cajole her. So, yeah. As for, Discount Wesker, and he needs a chaperone, and he smokes and has earrings, which is something that I don't think Wesker would do. Just saying. Just putting it out there in the ether that it's a bit lame. Yeah, I'm not feeling it just yet, so I guess we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah, we'll get to that, certainly. In terms of Grace being sent there by the FBI, I am of the belief that there is some shady stuff going on there. As we know, connections in the US government have a history working together. So it seems likely that that was all a ploy. And that's the kind of thing that I don't necessarily mind being outright spelled out. But there is a lot of questions that I have that I would have preferred some answers to, but we will get there. I'm with you. The first half with the intrigue is way more interesting than the payoff, unfortunately, winds up being. The mounting up of all the questions and stuff is kind of cool. I never really understood... Maybe I haven't thought about it too deeply. So they're picking up bodies from Raccoon City and bringing them to Rhodes Hill to mulch them and turn them into blood, to something consciousness experiment, passing of memories. It's not really clear to me. And presumably that is what this whole cloning thing was for, to some extent. What that is, we don't know. Whether that's putting a Wesker, Spencer, somebody else, or even just anyone into one of these girls' heads as consciousness to try and get that experiment right. Perhaps, I don't know, but that's the kind of thing where it's like, I would have liked... I can't believe... I'm kind of bouncing all over the place here, but I can't believe I played a Resident Evil game where I was about 90% of the way through and I was begging for a lore room. Usually we're like, it's a very trite way to tell your story, but whatever. But when I knew the end was coming, I was like, please a bunch of files. I need some answers to these questions, and I was terrified that we weren't going to get them.
You get a big file when you beat the game.
You do, and that is very helpful, and I appreciate that because it helped me put into context more about the connections involvement across the years, and that was good, definitely. But I meant stuff that actually directly, impacts the story. The only thing about the first half specifically that I did want to mention is that every time we cut to Leon, it's to save Grace, and I was unfortunately let down. We were worried that was going to happen. I don't think it's overly in your face, but when you think about it, it is kind of disappointing. He saves her from the girl at the beginning of coming into the center and gives her the Requiem. The chapel bit, he kind of saves her twice. Like, he snipes a bunch of enemies so she can get in, then he holds them off so she can get out. And then... when you're fighting off the mutated Emily in the water treatment facility, it's Leon that saves Grace for that bit as well. And it's like, okay. Well, yeah. I'm not surprised. There should be a power difference, of course, but okay. I'll take the story structure we have in terms of getting from A to B to Raccoon City over what I expected, because when the helicopter showed up I was like, they're going to put Emily in that helicopter, fly her away, and Sherry's going to be like, they're taking her to Raccoon City, we better get in the car and drive there. And it's like, that's kind of lazy. So Grace having a moral conflict was more interesting to me on that front. James, what do you think about the first half primarily of the story? I know we are kind of touching on bits and pieces, but
I saw the smile on your face there. Oh,
rein it in.
guys, being special isn't special, but being normal is special. And if you're normal and not special, you're probably special. Okay? Just think about that. Think about it really deeply. And if it doesn't make any sense, then you're right where we are. Because none of it makes fucking sense. Like,
yeah.
The first half of this game is strong. The first half of this game is its strongest points. I'm not going to say the game is strong overall. It's just, it lays all these questions down. I love questions. I think we all love questions in a mystery. It promised mystery in this first half. You're meant to be learning as Grace does. Unfortunately, it just starts to fall apart when you get about halfway through, and nothing adds up. I will point one thing out, and we don't know, right, what year Grace was born in.
Mm-hmm.
However, she was born in 2004, except going by the history that we know, she can't have been. She cannot have been, right? And we have no information, right? So yeah. Things like that, little things like that, right? Things just start falling apart. They don't add up. Like, you could explain things away with assumption, and you have to do that an awful lot with this game because you cannot lead off anything. There's no text. There's no, you're led to believe Grace is special in some way. In fact, even the trailers, they promote this constantly throughout the game's marketing, the trope. And then like all the way through it, there's this trope of almost finding out and then being cut short before there's any kind of resolution. And that would be fine if there was a payoff, which there wasn't. Like, the bait never delivers. And like there's other inconsistent moments, right? Kind of reading, that when the assassin that kills Alyssa at the start, says, found you to Grace, then immediately dies. Like, he feels like he's an important character that knows more, but we'll never get to learn because he's just disposed of. Then moments later, Gideon turns up. I'm not sure why Gideon just didn't do this. Like, why did he have to bring an assassin in? I mean, it might have just been shock value. Like, the Capcom would just do it. You remember this guy that Grace just spoke to, but at the same time, it's like, why didn't it makes no sense? Because Gideon literally, he didn't care about being clandestine because he just puts Grace over his shoulder and then just walks out into the street. Yeah,
gets on his bike, puts her in the sidecar, off they go.
Exactly. And we also learned that a hooded man was following Alyssa and Grace as well. This could either be Gideon or the assassin. Like, this assassin just felt like a pointless extra step. And there's stuff like, this is just one. From the very beginning, there are often these things throughout these little things that I've just throughout the game, and I've put a bunch of questions for the end of the story section. And we were just introduced to these questions and we were never given anything without any further detail. Gideon, I think, is the one who gives the most context at times, but that comes later on. I think in the first half, because I do want to bring a positive in, from the first half, Marie, and that relationship between Marie and Emily, and when you learn who Marie is, that I really like that and how tragic it was. As tale as old as time with Capcom, it's a tragic story of experimentation, very similar to Lisa Trevor, except it's like ramped up to 11 with these girls, because what was it, 114 subjects, I think, or something. Like,
that sounds right.
There was so many of these girls that were cloned by. They were cloned from a Grace that didn't exist.
Yeah. Well, that's the confusion, isn't it? Like, and this is, again, sort of bouncing around, but the misunderstanding of the connections being like, oh, yeah, they cloned you, but we need the real one because clearly you're important because of your DNA, which is not what they need. They need a password, not DNA. So kind of confused by that. But yeah, they don't think about the fact that she's not been around since the early 80s, because we know that at least one of these bodies that you see in the orphanage is born in 1983.
Yeah.
So, like, she's not 40, 50 years old. Like, what? Like, so I don't know. Unless they think that she's a perfect clone that's since got away. But the lack of.
I think what they're getting at is that there is a whole blood memory transfer thing. They think Spencer's cracked it, and Grace has got the memories of Spencer inside.
Right. Yeah. I think so too, perhaps, but
obviously that's not true in the end, as it turns out, because Spencer's thought, you know what, 11th hour face turn, let's do it. But
it doesn't stand, does it?
No.
Yeah.
Like it's the foundations of the entire.
Does that mean these
twist.
all carry the same blood type of Spencer then? Like, is that what they're trying to replicate inside Emily
perhaps.
and Marie? And I suppose all those other children that were children of Corning, the half of the orphanage staff. Like,
yeah,
sorry.
Sorry, yeah, no, I don't have much more to add, but it's just, yeah, it's. I think the reason why I'm so frustrated is because the first half just gave you so much. You know, and I'll go back to kind of the blood collector thing. I said ages ago, like during gameplay, I thought the blood collector thing. I thought there was going to be some kind of connection to the blood, but really, the blood meant nothing. Like. None of it meant anything. Like, I mean, no, I'll speak about that later because it comes later. But yeah, I'm done.
Kelsey, what did you make of the first half of this game's plot?
So you said you wanted a file room at the end. Are you telling me that you weren't happy with the file that told us how much liquors cost? That was like huge. We're blowing the lid off here. We know how much we're charging.
I wasn't happy with it
yeah.
because I saw Nemesis Gamma in there and I was like, oh dear.
Yes. This is so difficult. This is really hard. Like I think there's a lot I agree with. It's very difficult for me to kind of get really, really stuck into the kind of like the deep lore and these connections and stuff, because there are a lot of issues and they'll come up later as well. But in terms of, from a more broad sense about how I think the story makes me feel and what it's trying to say, there is some good stuff. And that's kind of what I've been thinking about and focusing on more. Like, I love the mystery and the conspiracy stories, and it's right from the get-go, like that is what this game's doing, and that's always been at the root of what I like about Resident Evil. And the tension here in the initial stages is coming from these secrets and uncovering the truth and what's happening with these bizarre incidents and the black bruising. And Requiem leans heavily into that right at the start. You know, Grace is an analyst for the FBI, and yeah, the FBI guy, like, obviously there's something going on there as well. It's just like, oh, by the way, I know this is where your mum was murdered, but get over there by yourself, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and sort this out, will you? It's like, yeah, come on. Even, to be honest, just the way that the camera follows that guy to Grace's desk, it's like, you know, intentional or not, to me it says this guy he's about to execute something here, and it's to send Grace on her way. But early on, the story is about, it's trying to uncover what's happening at these locations and to the people connected to them. The black bruising, Alyssa's murder, these experiments, the patients at the care centre, and obviously what's happening to Leon and what he's investigating. And all this bizarre setup absolutely worked for me. You throw in Gideon, this huge mysterious figure talking about Grace being special and possibly some kind of chosen one, which he says really early. And that is also funny to me because in our wishlist episode, I talked about Leon being revealed as some kind of chosen one. So kind of not what I was thinking about at the time. But yeah, so the setup, it could not have been much better. I was completely invested. It then adds this creepy blind girl into the mix with Emily, and this strange relationship with the girl, aka Marie, which plays directly into Grace's trauma about losing her mother. And I think from that point, the narrative is working for me, and it really starts moving. You know, you see Grace is going from being absolutely terrified to, okay, she's got something to hang on to here. And say some more stuff about Grace in a minute, maybe when we move to characters. But yeah, Emily is like, she wants to save Emily, and she's trying to fill this void left by her mother's death. And that Emily is her key. Emily is her hope. You know, that's kind of some foreshadowing there. While Leon is determined to save Sherry himself and now Grace. And yes, of course, he, as you mentioned, Si, he's coming to Grace's rescue, and okay, it can be a bit sort of contrived, but I do think that gets flipped on its head right at the end as well, which is good.
Yeah.
And yeah, Leon's had to live through failing to save so many people, and we kind of reach this, and I'm on board with what's going on here. It's like, yeah, I can see what they're doing. And then Emily mutates, and this thread that Grace was hanging on by is just completely severed. She falls into this massive black hole, and all of a sudden we've got Zeno and Gideon saying, nope, you're special, you're the answer, you're the thing we've been waiting for, come with us. And it's kind of fascinating to watch Grace submit to them for a bit, which is what she goes with them, and maybe they've got the answers she's been looking for. And I think this at that point, this theme of kind of searching for answers, and also this other thing creeps in of people idolizing false gods. You know, Gideon is clearly obsessed with Spencer, has been calling him his master, and then we've got Zeno, a clone or otherwise, represents someone or something or some entity has been obsessively obsessed by Wesker and trying to recreate Wesker. So that midway point, when the door opened and he stood there, Zeno, I'm like, I mean, I didn't know what to think. My first thought was, it's Wesker, and how are they going to explain this? And then very quickly, you sort of think, okay, it's not, there's something else going on here. But at that midway point, despite some of the issues about the blood and all this kind of thing going on, I was on board. Yeah, I was fine. I was really, really liking it. I thought this story, they are combining a really cool story with, okay, they're playing into some fan service stuff here, and how are they going to pull it off? How is this game going to end up? What else are they going to do, and where are we going to end up? And I think it hits and misses towards the end, and we'll kind of get into that more a bit now. But yeah, like, I think we all agree there's some really strong setups in these questions, and that's what you said as well, James, the questions and mysteries. It's solid. I absolutely, I'd go so far as saying I love it. And then it maybe gets a bit convoluted. So yeah, there's themes in there, and I've really focused on those themes and what I'm taking away from it that I was really enjoying at the halfway point.
I completely agree with a lot of that, really. I was really, like I said, trying to focus on the first half, generally quite positive, until maybe the Wesker thing. Then I started to have a lot of questions, but I was kind of on board for it. I was like, if you're going to answer these, then okay, if you can do it, let's do it. But, whether or not we got there, it's obviously a different thing. And you're right as well. My first note for the next bit is Grace does get some crowning moments of awesome towards the end of the game. I like that, and I also like that they're not necessarily combat focused. She's not a combat focused character. She's a bit of a support role, a support class, if you like a Rebecca. She can slot into that kind of mold a lot better. So her kind of standing up towards the end and saying, yeah, I'll do it, but you have to spare Leon's life, and her kind of doing what we all can't and piecing this story together and figuring out what actually Spencer is up to. I like stuff like that. I also like that because she doesn't do the traditional weak character becomes gun-toting badass arc, it does mean that if we use her again, she can fit again back into horror theory. She hasn't completely overcome her fears or anything. She just found her answers and did the right thing and stuff like that. So yeah, let's talk about the second half of the game, and also let's get into endings and stuff like that as well. The multiple endings of the game, where Grace is presented with either destroying or releasing Elpis. Destroying because Leon, well, everyone believes it's a weapon, and Leon says, let's destroy it, or releasing it because of the implication that perhaps, as the name Elpis implies, which means hope, cannot emphasize how staring you in the face that is perhaps the right answer. I chose destroy first just to see what would happen, and oh my god. Didn't expect that. Yeah, exactly. Another example of they actually did it. They kill Leon and the game ends without a final boss. At which point I was like, that's hilarious and definitely not the actual ending. And then the game says, would you like to go back to the choice? Although, again, like the wishlist episode, we did say it'd be fun if we get multiple endings and they don't actually tell us which one is the canon one. There's nothing to say that this isn't the actual ending. They could really flip it on its head in a couple of years' time, or even a year's time when they do the DLC, and be like, anyway, so the story picks up after Leon died. Who knows? But the other ending, which we're presuming is the canon ending, Elpis is indeed antiviral. Everyone is cured, as I say. You fight Nemesis form Victor Gideon. And yeah, the Howlin' Wolf squad make their second appearance for whatever reason. There's so much where it all falls apart in the last moments for me. And you guys were talking about Hunk, and I didn't really want to touch on it because it was such an early indication that, like, this is just going to be a game of stuff for stuff's sake. Hunk appearing, really cool. Hunk facing Leon, really cool. It's Keith Silverstein, it's everything. He's got the moveset. He's not called Hunk, though. He's not called Hunk in the credits. They never acknowledge him as Hunk. Capcom haven't called him Hunk. They never will. Is he dead? Dunno. If you go back, his body's not there. It's completely up for you to decide. And they did exactly the same thing with Xeno. The biggest twist of the game is that there is a Wesker-shaped character here with Wesker's voice actor and two, I think it was WJ on the Discord server's credit. I mean, it's Resident Evil. They could just be reusing a voice actor. They have done that before. But obviously, this is very clearly meant to make you think of Wesker. He's got a black coat over his shoulder, sunglasses, he's got glowing eyes, he does Wesker dodges. This is very clearly meant to be a Wesker clone, a subconscious but into another body thing, whatever it is. And then they kill him. They chop his head off at the end of the game, so it doesn't matter now if we get answers or not necessarily, because he's gone. Maybe they'll just bring up another Xeno Beta, or someone with a less stupid name than Xeno, perhaps. But what, like, the absolute horrible pit of the stomach disappointment that they killed him off. They could have Victor Gideon coming back. I was so afraid when the bike scene happened that was going to be it. Like, because it feels kind of final when you're like, surely you have to have an actual face-off with these guys. He's had an actual presence in the story, like physically interacted with these characters multiple times. He has to be the final boss. So, kind of thank goodness he is. I really was hoping that this Xeno guy was going to be waving from a helicopter as he flew away onwards to his next mad scheme. But alas, they kill him. On the plus side, they've established the connections as like a genuine thing now across multiple games. They've weaved them into the narrative, and clearly this is the big corporation moving forward, and I'm glad we have that. Please don't bottle it, Capcom, and change your mind. Please stick with this. The only problem is they're just a bunch of failures. Everything they've done has been a complete screw up. They completely misunderstood this, sent their best guy, and he gets his head chopped off. So I don't feel particularly threatened by them, and I hope they can fix that, because I'm glad they're here, and I'm glad that they've, kind of as I've implied, woven a bunch of stuff together about them working with Tricell and HCF and bringing that stuff back together. I was like, this is cool. I can really get on board with all of that. They pushed Umbrella out of the way, and they've taken on board all their stuff, so I'm kind of cool with that. Yeah, it's all over the place. My last point I do want to mention is the final boss of this game. What a cheapskate move to just be like, anyway, here's the final boss from another game. He's a nemesis.
Yeah.
Like, I can almost buy that maybe he's a nemesis because it's been 30 years since the alpha, and maybe you can put a parasite in a human being and they're fine with it. Back in the day, it would have to be put in a tyrant, and we know how hard tyrants were to make. They had to clone the same one over and over again, the perfect specimen, to even get a tyrant, let alone a nemesis. But it's been 30 years. Maybe if he was insane enough, he could ingest a parasite and be okay. But it's another example of, look, there it is. We did the thing. it's just kind of, whatever. The end of this game I just unfortunately find exhausting, and we said at the beginning of this episode, and I had to laugh, I think obviously you said about people praising this as a masterpiece. I'm glad people feel about it that way for them. I'm too invested in the story to feel that way about it. I cannot tell you the damage that this complete mess of a story does to how I feel about Requiem. It plays great. There's some issues here and there, but this story is dreadful, and it's really put a damper on my experience overall. Steve, how do you feel about the state of Requiem?
You know, the second that knockoff Wesker showed up, I knew I was going to be pissed off by the end. I can copium my brain around it now, saying this is probably just the Connections have made their own version of Wesker because pivotal character, Zenith of Spencer's research allegedly, make a knockoff, you know? But at the same token, what does he do? Like, he literally he acts like a smug git. He chain smokes, he gets his head lopped off. Part of me thinks that's what they're retrieving at the end, if not Elpis, taking his severed head.
His head or something.
I feel like the story isn't done with Discount Wesker, but we need to have an actual explanation at this point. Yes, there's various bits and pieces throughout the franchise since Revelations 2 alluding to making some kind of form, but it doesn't feel like Wesker resurrected. You know, it's too meek and too much of a whiny baby with Gideon at the end. I appreciated Gideon turned up, and I was kind of like there for it when he lopped his head off, because to be honest with you, I don't want Discount Wesker. He appeared and he off from minute one, whereas Victor's been making me laugh the entire time. Absolute madman. If he hadn't had that final form, if he had something more uniquely, I don't know, crocodile themed, the man's got like reptile skin and reptile coat. Alligator snapper is in the gun name. Something that wasn't just his nemesis from 3R only. Leon doesn't need a railgun because he's got the Requiem. It would have been a little bit better. Like, I even appreciated that he hammer spaced his own rocket launcher out like we pull our guns out sometimes. Total video game nonsense. That being said, the actual resolution, the thing that mostly upset me, genuinely, is when the lights go out and Hound Wolf Squad show up. Like, of all the characters in the entire franchise, these goggle-headed bags get a cameo. Not Claire, not Jill, not Chris.
Yeah.
Hound Wolf Squad. Like, I need these characters to die, and I need them to die yesterday. They are boring. Like, yeah, keep K9 alive for Shadows of Rose, but the rest, blender. We'll go back to Rhodes Hill. The basement's got a really good blender. All I'm saying. Grace's resolution where she's still shattered, and Leon gives her a bit of hope, and it turns out that's all right for Emily. Kind of nice, ridiculous, but I can accept it for the sake of, seeing Emily die and then transform. That whole trying to resuscitate scene. I was in tears at that point as well. So I'm on board with that. Give Grace a somewhat happy ending, but there also needs to be some serious note. Now the boss at FBI needs to go or be investigated, Grace, because he's not on the level. He's on the take. He's with the Connections, love. Very much like the last few hours of this game are okay, fair enough. I'm glad Leon got out okay. But I feel like the story's not done. Like, there are things that we need to learn about. I feel like we're going to get not a hero or a sisters. Was it sisters? I think daughters. Those VHS tapes from 7. I feel like there are pieces of the story that are going to land in our lap sooner rather than later. Especially now Requiem sold so well, they've got to capitalise on it, right? That's maybe copium. If I see Hound Wolf Squad again and they are alive, I might be done with this franchise. I might, I'm hanging by a thread at Xeno's presence because I think Wesker being brought back in any form's a cop out. But I'm hanging on.
Yeah, it's tough really, because on the one hand, I'm not necessarily opposed to various aspects of it because they've laid the groundwork here for ages, and the head honcho behind Requiem is the guy behind Revelations 2, and that's all about consciousness transference. So I'm kind of glad we've carried that on. And Umbrella Corps, as much as it's Umbrella Corps, it does establish that there is a Wesker-like character about, and potentially this is them. So I don't know, I'm not necessarily outright opposed to that, but the handling of it just made me all so numb. Spencer's face turn, I just thought was so stupid, and just he devoted his entire life to being a racist bioterrorist, and then at the end he's like, maybe killing people doesn't make you happy. I'm going to adopt a child and then confuse everyone. Was just like, what? So when the Hound Wolf guys turned out, I think I was just laughing with incredulity. I was just like, yeah, sure, whatever, fine. Like, we know they have to exist to 2036 in some format because Shadows of Rose.
One of them
implies
does.
that they do. At least one of them is around. I can't remember if it outright specifically states that he's still with that organization or what, but yeah, you need to do something with them to make us care, not just have them show up as a bunch of goons for 2 games in a row. They need to get time to put their individual personalities on display. Somebody in our Discord server showed the concept art of them where they've all got their helmets off and they have all different looks to them. They all look like interesting characters. We need to see them as people, individuals. I don't care if it doesn't make sense. Lose the uniforms and give them something more individual if we are moving forward with that. But yeah, that's all I have to say on those guys. James, how do you feel about the story of Requiem? As if I don't know.
I will talk about a positive thing first, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be kind once. There was a moment in this game where they started talking about memory transference and the science behind that, and I got really excited. I was like, that's a really dope pseudoscience thing. Mm-hmm. You know, especially after Village and the Megamycete, which I
also has it as well. Yes,
which
absolutely
I really freaking loved. I was like, this is sick. Okay, they're doing continuity. Yes, it kind of like it messes things like with some of the canon at times, but this is continuity now. Cool. Really cool idea, and they're carrying it on. Megamycete never mentioned, once. I think the only kind of reference we get to it is potentially Plant 43. It looks kind of moldy.
Yeah, I wondered that the first time I saw it, to be fair.
Yeah, when it was down there. Also, when it comes to Spencer, I think, whether romantically or not, but he held something for Miranda. As in his office right at the end, you see a picture of her, potentially her.
No, I think it's confirmed.
Yeah, with the letter M on the painting. And also, I this is an assumption by me, but I think his icebreaker ship that he went on the expedition with, there's also a picture of that on the wall. I'm wondering if we are to get, I'll tell you what would be dope, if we get a DLC of that expedition.
Interesting.
Would be really cool. A lot could be explained potentially, and I'm wondering if ignoring all the things that are inaccurate, because if I do that, I will talk about them, but if I do that, I'll get so mad. But I'm wondering, because of Miranda's history with losing a child and wanting to gain a child and just wanting the family, wanting a family. I'm wondering if in his old age he just saw that and thought, other than being an awful person, because people can heel turn, people can change, and he might have saw that and think, I want to kind of honor that life, of somebody that I respected and worked with. So yeah, but again, we have hardly any information other than small kind of things like that. We don't have any extra information that we kind of need to kind of cement those kind of things. But yeah, when it comes to the second half of this I want to talk. This actually ties in because I know we've been talking about the boss, right? The FBI boss, and the fact that, he's definitely shady. He's definitely under payroll of the connections. In fact, the FBI probably is, because as you're going through this game, you're told twice. I think it's one by Gideon in the helicopter. He says to Zeno that the DSO looks like your plan to force the DSO to stand down didn't work, Zeno. So they tried to corrupt the DSO and they didn't manage it. However, they do say later on that they did manage to put pressure on the BSAA. Actually, it was Sherry who says that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we know that the connections, they corrupt major government organizations. So they definitely do that with the FBI boss. That's underlined. However, the thing that confuses me is why Grace is still at the FBI and is still, despite how smart she is, right, is still taking orders from this man. This man sent her to be to a place where she was traumatized, to be traumatized once again, alone. She's not stupid. She's not. We've learned throughout the game she's not dumb. Right, and she's incredibly she's detail orientated. She's an analyst, right? And we see at the end she's still taking orders from this man, not investigating him. I would love to see more of that. I want to see her take down the FBI, or at least the boss of the FBI.
It's up to us to take down the FBI.
Exactly. Yeah. It just, again, but I mean, this is a long list of just things that don't make sense, because I don't think this stuff will ever be brought up. It will never go any further. One kind of thing I saw as well is that people have been saying online that why didn't Sherry and Leon recognize the Wesker clone? Sherry and Leon have never seen Wesker canonically. Yeah. They might probably seen pictures of stuff, but I mean, this Zeno guy did not dress. I mean, we've all watched Superman, right?
Well, people have compared the RE engine models. He's not the same model,
right? He did not look the same. No. But. Yeah, he's I mean, to us, definitely Wesker vibes. And I was interested, like when I saw that figure when the door opened up after Emily died, I was intrigued where it was going to go, but my questions would never be answered. And speaking of Emily, actually, this is an all-encompassing thing. About halfway through my playthrough, I went, there better not be a cure-all. There better not be a cure-all. That. I need a bittersweet ending. You can't do this. And then we get to the end and there's a cure-all in Elpis. Plus that dumbass twist. I hated it because with Emily, it's you turned this child into a 12-foot monstrosity. She literally morphed, she evolved, she turned into something else, and giving her Elpis made her just revert. It made her de-evolve, into a child again. I know I'm being very critical here, but I have to be, because this game is trash when it comes to the story. It's bad. So I'm going to be extra critical. And again, when it comes to the conclusion, right, later on, there's a reason why this stuff doesn't make sense. Right, there's a reason it doesn't make sense why things aren't connecting, and we can assume all we want, right? But normally Capcom are very good at connecting these links. There's even there'll be half truths that you can talk about, but in this game there isn't these half truths. You're just kind of led to believe, and even the information, the fact that the same game is giving you is not correct, such as the age of grace. It's not correct. And until we get some kind of a DLC or an explanation or a file reading, right, or an expansion or something to explain these things or several things, then I will continue to be critical of this story. But judging by what we got with Resident Evil 7, I don't have high hopes, when it comes to an expanded story.
Oh, okay. I don't know if I necessarily agree with the RE7 thing. I think the DLC stuff bolted on some good bits. I mean, it's standalone perfectly works for me. But,
right. I think seven stood alone on its own really well, though. That's the thing.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Yeah, no, okay, that's fair. I'm kind of with you. Like, I don't know if I was asked to rank it right now, where to put it. I need to wait for some context to be given from other pieces of media that inevitably has to happen. And this DLC that we're probably going to get, because every Resident Evil game gets it, is going to have to do some real heavy lifting for me to fill in some blanks. Regarding the Emily thing, I think it's weirdly meant to imply that she's just in there as a child and the monster is built around her. You kind of see her like nestled in it, which is kind of ludicrous. Raikazu said something in the chat I just want to point out, by the way, which is hilarious. Because at the end, Leon says, I didn't hit any of her vitals, implying, don't worry, she's probably still in there. But at the time she was a monster, why didn't you do that? Like, come on.
Yeah, it's meta-knowledge.
As the kids say, Leon is
characters.
Like, he's lying. He doesn't know a thing.
Yeah, it's just like, let's hope that's right. Like everything in this game, let's hope that's right. That's the thing about the Grace age stuff as well. They just kind of keep coming back to, like, they how old is Grace and stuff. I don't think there is meant to be confusion about her being born in the 80s or 70s versus the 2000s or whatever.
No.
But then, because that isn't the case, the only logical answer is that the connections are idiots. And they are chasing after this girl who, I guess is a perfect match for reasons unexplained, even though she's not involved with the trials in any way. It's very weird. Kelsey, what do you think of the endings of the game and the general story wrap up?
Yeah, what you just said there is kind of my biggest question, is when did the bluff start? Do you know what I mean? Like, because that is the thing that for me isn't explained. And you've all covered it, really. I mean, the game, it becomes about rug pulls and stuff. It's pulling out the rug from the characters within the game. It's pulling out the rug from us as the audience, and kind of just pulling out the rug from itself, and it sort of trips over in lots of different ways. It makes bold choices about Spencer and stuff. And I know there's debate over his intentions, and Grace writes it in the report. No, we may never know his true intentions. I feel like that's a safety net, because obviously Resident Evil is going to continue, and putting anything finite, like Steve said, it's not the end of the story. I wonder if it's almost mandated. It's like, you can't put anything finite. We're going to make 10 more of these, right. So nothing can be finite, and it's sort of bound by that in a really frustrating way. So much of what happens annoys me in the same way as it has for all of you. I think in terms of what it's trying to say within this game, it's 100% saying, no, Spencer is, he's having a face turn and he feels guilty and he wants to atone. It's said in like 3 different ways. So that's, whether they change that in the future, fine, do whatever you want. But that's what this game is doing, and that's what it does. It sort of loses sight of reality in the same way, Gideon becomes this kind of reflection of that as well. He becomes a bit warped and loses grasp of reality as well. And I thought that was quite meta. There's a ton of lore questions and plot holes, which you've all touched on, and I just can't get into, because some of it is too confusing to me. And so instead I'm trying to think, okay, by the end of this game, what am I feeling? What am I thinking? And it's like, yep, there's about 10 different questions that have got to be answered. When the Hound Wolf's God appeared, I just said, what? Like, I was really upset that's who was repelling in, and I was really upset. But anyway, that aside, we finish up. What's it saying? It's a story that's dealing with, as I said, the cost of playing God and the trauma that brings on not just the people that you're hurting, but yourself, and wanting to atone. And then it sets up this idea that an ordinary person can be the hope for a better world. And it's like, that makes Requiem sound much more grandiose than it is, but I like that. I like those themes, and because that ties directly to Grace and who Grace is as a character, and I really, really like Grace. So timeline issues and connections to other games and lore aside, I like those themes. I took those away. The game is called Requiem. It's about remembering the people that have died and that Leon hasn't been able to save. His gun is called Requiem. This is not... it's there in black and white. That's the messages around this game, and then it's sort of surrounded with some Resident Evil nonsense and confusing stuff. It's honoring the dead, the people that Leon couldn't save, and the people that Spencer has caused harm to, and even Spencer, honoring or whatever by now taking down, what does he say? Take it all down or burn it all down, the people that have followed his footsteps and ripped it all away from him. But yeah, so I'd sort of look at it in two ways. It's like, yep, when you get into the minutiae, there's a whole bunch of questions about how this virus works and timeline and stuff. But I think this is why I think the themes and how the game plays is why it's done so well and is reviewed so well, because, and I really do not want to sound gatekeepy here. I just think if you're a big Resident Evil fan and play all the games, and that's kind of what you do, you will love this game. Of course you will. But I think if you're in a position like us where we spend maybe a bit more time thinking about it and, like you said, Si, caring about the story, there's lots of ways that it falls apart. So the story lets this game down in a massive way by the end, which is really frustrating. I like the themes, but those details are really, really bad. And then it just makes those choices with the Hound Wolf squad and stuff that's, really annoying. So it's a shame. But, some strong character stuff, which we're probably going to touch on in a sec. So, yeah, bit of a shame.
Yeah. I do like that you're like, if you're like us, you spend a little more time thinking about it, or 4 hours so far discussing it. So let's move swiftly on now to some of our final points, bounce through some of the last headings. And now, reading the file Record of Events from Resident Evil Requiem in character as David Ford, Shotgun Sinner, who you can find on X at Malicious World.
September 25th. We're turning the station into a temporary shelter due to the massive sudden outbreak. All police personnel have been instructed to make the safety of the citizens their top priority as we try to accommodate as many of them as possible. September 25th, Addendum. One of the refugees attacked us in the middle of the night, resulting in the death of one officer and injuring 3 others. The person in question was quickly restrained. We believe this was simply a case of someone snapping under intense stress. September 26th. A mob attacked the station today, resulting in a number of casualties. A few survivors were able to make it safely behind the emergency shutters, but surrounded as we are, it'll be hard for any of us to escape this place. We're not sure if we can fix any of our comm equipment, so we remain cut off from the outside world. September 27th. There was another clash on the west side of the station around 1 p.m. 12 people died, and there was only a handful of survivors left. Everything is falling into disarray here. David Ford.
Just a space to talk a bit more about how we felt about the characters in this game. Obviously, we have returning characters like Leon and Sherry, and a lot of new characters as well, with Zeno, Gideon, Emily, and so on. I think I'm just going to quickly go through mine. Grace is excellent. She's really good. Her facial capture in particular is a big thing about why I liked her so much as well, from the terror and the pain in her face early on to those occasional moments of confidence and bravado that I talked about. She has a real arc here, and she's really, dragged kicking and screaming through hell, both physically and psychologically, with this whole, like, by the way, you're adopted, now give us the key, we've heavily misunderstood. But also, what I like most about her, I think, as I kind of spend more time away from the game, and I've seen lots of memes about this that are amusing, but I actually really like the fact that she's a Gen Z protagonist.
She is.
She looks like a Gen Z kid, and I actually really like that. Like Ethan Winters, I like Ethan Winters more than most, but he's a guy. He's like all grown up, adult, male, whatever. This feels like fresh blood in more ways than one, and I think that's really cool in a franchise where everyone is very much aging into their 50s. I fear that maybe we never hear from her again now that she's got her happy ending, but I hope that's not the case, because these younger characters, it was really refreshing, and I really like that. I thought Leon was very likable in this game. He got a lot of laughs out of me this time. This might even be Nick's best work on the character, which is saying something. He feels like
easily.
he really paid attention to where Leon is at this point through various other performances. I got a lot of Matt's RE6 Leon in here, but really worn down. Might be the best performance of the game, possibly. Him and Grace really toe-to-toe. They both did incredible. I like a lot of the praise we've heard about Victor Gideon so far in this podcast, and I'm only going to give more. I think he's a really captivating villain. This is what happens when you make them a presence in the story instead of, they just kind of appear at the end. As I said, I was worried that he was going to be jobbed off before the end and we were swapping to Xeno, but him being the final fight, even though I don't like the final boss, it was cool to have, again, in a series with lots of one-off villains. We've got another one here, but I quite enjoyed it. I don't think he would have served a purpose beyond this story, so it's kind of okay for him to die here. And I had a really good time with him. Sherry Mother Hubbard Birkin is back. Oh my God, I was so happy to have that confirmed. No, she doesn't do much. She probably should have mentioned her involvement in Raccoon City or Claire. It's kind of stupid that she doesn't in any way mention something about the orphanage or the RPD. But the fact that she's even released from Resident Evil 6 jail time is massive to me. I hope she's a big focus in the DLC. This can't be the last we see from her. At the end of the game, there's actually like a line about... I can't remember exactly what the line is. If someone remembers, then great, please chuck it in. But there's some implication that now she can be cured of the syndrome. Maybe she can get back out in the field or whatever. So that's exciting. And as we said about Alyssa, I'm glad that they kept her dead. They didn't bring her back. Whether as a human, as a monster, that feels kind of obviously tragic. There's tragic stories, and then there's you fight your own mum as a monster. I'm like, that feels just like a bit obvious almost. Canon limbo is far worse than actually being important to the story and dead. Rest in peace, Alyssa. She never got to hear an episode of First Aid Spray because she died like a month before the podcast started. So that sucks for her, I guess. James, what do you think of the characters?
God, I was going to say, sorry, that joke completely... Oh no!
Proud of that one. Proud of
that. Right, yeah. So Grace Cinnamon Roll. Love.
Absolutely.
I love Grace so much. I did want a bit more confidence at her from her towards the end, because during that set piece with the helicopter, we saw that confidence there. It was growing. And then at the end, when she's with Leon, she starts to stutter and is anxious again. And I didn't really like that very much. I'm like, you just went through so much. She can do it. She's very capable. She didn't need to do the, like the cartoon-ish. I saw it a couple times. It just rubbed me wrong because I was like, I know you can do better, girl. So, but yeah, and also we see that confidence in the report she does at the end. Incredible work. I read through the entire thing during my stream. It was nice. It was very cool. I just wanted to see her be a little bit more sure of herself, and the actions and the even the successes she'd done as well. I also understand the the familiarity of a character that is just normal, but she's clearly far from normal, resistant. She's either resistant or she's immune to bites. There's just, again, that's another inconsistency with the story. Created by Spencer, just like yourself, Si, I don't think this is the last we'll hear from Grace. And when it comes to her confidence, by the way, I don't want her to be like another Leon. I don't want her to be another Chris. It'd be nice if we see a character kind of grow more. And that's why I want to see her in more stuff. When it comes to Leon, absolutely loved him too. There's just the same with you, side. There were some lines that are just really the just rest in my eyes line was so funny. Because it reminded me of my guardian when I was younger. Like, he always used to say that, and he was in his 40s. like late 40s. Like, you know, and, you know, he'd be watching Star Trek, you know, or something, and then he'd fall asleep, and then we'd switch the channel to CBeebies or something, you know, and then he'd immediately wake up, and we'll just say, oh, you were asleep. Just resting my eyes. I was like, oh, you just reminded me of Leon. Leon reminded me of him. It was very funny. Yeah, and I was very, very surprised about Leon, because like I was very, I wasn't super keen on seeing Leon again in another game. So like, but I was very keen. It was weird because I was very keen on seeing Nick as Leon, but I wasn't keen on seeing Leon, the character. When I heard that Nick was going to be Leon, I was much more attracted to the game. And I wasn't bounced off like I thought I was going to be. I was proven wrong. And as usual, characterization in this game is incredible. The scene-to-scene stuff, very good. Like, if you just isolate all the scenes, and somebody said it in the chat earlier, I would love to see them get nominated for stuff.
Hopefully,
potentially in the future. But yeah, I am not super keen on the adamantine plot armor this man has. It's frustrating. I really wanted to see him die, guys. I know you do get to, but there's clearly only one ending to this game. I really wanted to see him either die or there be some really big kind of reason why he would need to step away. But Capcom are cowards, so they never would. Really wanted him to pass the torch to Grace, but yeah, I didn't get that vibe when he just walked away coolly at the end.
That's fair.
Oh, Xeno sucks.
Yes, he does.
Cool. Kelsey, thoughts on characters?
Grace is absolutely amazing. I think we're probably all going to be in agreement. Sai, you said a lot of what I was going to say, and she does have a complete arc in this game. And I think, you know, as I said earlier, being driven by Alyssa's death and wanting to overcome that, solve a conspiracy along the way, you know, hence her career as an analyst. So fresh, so believable, so real in terms of a young person. And I just think, yeah, I like Ethan too, but if we're going to have someone new and fresh that's going to stick around, I would love it to be Grace, and I really, really hope it is. There's so much to kind of connect with as you're playing as her, and this loss of Alyssa hanging over her and her investigation into the black bruising all feels very natural, and continuously throughout her performance you can just see the grief creeping back in time and time again, and then she finds something else to be focused on, and she's, as I said earlier, she was hanging by a thread, and then she meets Emily, and then that adds another layer to her motivation, and just where she ends up at the end, despite all this nonsense around it in the story that we've talked about. I just think she's so good. You know, the representation she has through, you know, her reaction and response to trauma and dealing with that through her stammer and the way she communicates with people, her body language. There's a lot going on with Grace, and I'm so happy that it feels like they did actually spend some time trying to create what I would call a modern character. Now that is almost a reductive way to kind of describe it by saying modern, but it just feels like a real character. This doesn't feel like the usual characters we get in Resident Evil. She is not a superhero, and the game goes out of its way to say that. And yeah, she feels like a real person, and yeah, absolutely love her. And Leon, this game, I've never hated Leon, but this game did a lot for Leon and kind of converting me by the end. There is a fantastic scene where it's kind of underneath the arc. He has that scene with Grace where his hardened shell kind of drops, and he talks about, you know, not being able to save people. And it's this real, genuine emotion from Leon, and it's a small moment, but I think it says a lot about who he is and what he's been going through. And I found myself liking him a lot more than I usually would. And there's just the kind of vulnerability with him that you don't usually get. And then it's cool towards the end that this dynamic of Grace and Leon is completely swapped. And, you know, he says to her, I trust you. And he puts it all in her hands and just, yeah. Again, despite the silliness, like I thought their dynamic and where we got to in the end was superb. So that was really, really good. And then, yeah, big fan of Gideon as well. And just a shame that he seems to have been jobbed off into a Nemesis redo. He sort of has this Frankenstein style doctor kind of vibe about him, which I really liked. He's got a signature one-hand choke attack, which he uses twice in the game, and the voice actor. I don't know if this is right or if I read it wrong, but it's possibly the same guy who voices Sadler in the RE4 remake.
Really?
And I thought Sadler in the RE4 remake was not good, but in this, the vocal range, the way he goes up and down from whispering to maniacal laughing to talking to himself. He's got this sort of sensual, commanding, manic delivery, and yeah, really, really good character, but just some weird stuff with the bike and stuff like that. So, and yeah, not too much to say about Xeno Fake Wesker. It felt like this was there purely to wink at the fans, and it all felt a bit pointless with this non-Wesker in the end, so bit of a shame. I have no more in-depth thoughts to talk about when it comes to him. It's just, I just think in terms of what the game gave us for another Leon appearance, actually I found myself coming away going, oh, Leon was brilliant in that one.
Yeah,
and
agreed.
I liked his one-liners as well. And that Grace was fantastic as well as a new character. So generally, you know, in a nutshell, in a vacuum, the characters, a lot going for them for the most part.
Agreed. Just to confirm, just a fact check, no, not the same voice actor as Sadler.
Misread that or something.
You've been misled.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's
Spencer!
Steve, what are your thoughts on the characters?
Much like everyone else, Grace, standout. Fantastic. Loved her. I mean, even the flashback before she's had all these horrible things happen to her, she's still anxious enough that she wants to hold up his hand. It's like, oh, so sweet. I love the fact that she has an arc, but it is not a full-on, I become Ellen Ripley at Destroyer of Worlds. It's, I become human, F you, I'm going to lob this, like, wrench in your plans. You know, that's good, you know? It's a more human and grounded telling than we're used to. Easily the best newcomer main cast member optimistically since RE5. Sherry gets a pass. Obviously, she was in RE2. Don't worry, she's fine. Appreciated seeing Sherry come back as well as getting Eden Rigel to reprise. Very much feels like the same character, just a bit more quiet, subdued, because obviously she not very well. Xeno, rubbish, don't like him. I appreciate him having a whiny meltdown and then getting chatted off by Victor Gideon, who absolutely in any like side games, if you ever do Resident Evil kart, he best turn up. Man is a wild
100%.
lad. Like, you know, I appreciated this man's stage presence just because he's so unhinged.
He's got Daniel for Bron in his times, you know?
and it's a villain because he was there for that long and he got that many scenes. I actually like, you know, what's he going to do next? Yeah, because I mean, the second scene you see him and he's already like shooting needles at people in the street, smiling and buggering off to the sunset. It's just like this is the kind of madness Resident Evil needs in what I thought was just another bioterrorist, but turns out he's a simp for for Marcus Oswald Spencer. Leon. I think this is definitely Nick's best Leon, and it's fitting that it's in a new adventure and not a remake. You know, like I totally like. I'm on board with the dad jokes. The every single time, like I felt that. You know, and I will forever just like, excuse me, I will never not chuckle at that. That was it was pretty good. You know, I have killed every plant I've ever owned. I can also believe that. And, you know. To reiterate how much Xeno really annoyed me, I was more excited to see Hunk and Plant 43. All right, you know, the idea of having a Wesker clone, it just feels like needless fan service stuff. And with Victor as well in the same game shows we can do compelling villains who are interesting without having to rely on sunglasses, man. Shame that he's dead. And Hand Wolf Squad can die in a fire. I just thought I'd reiterate that just so we're all clear. But Grace is a great newcomer. Love her. Leon, fantastic adventure. Do I think he's probably a little bit too bulletproof, like James said? Yes. But I appreciate that they had the balls to at least pretend to kill him off.
Let's swap it round then to the other side of the coin. Let's do enemies next. Steve, I'm actually going to start with you. What did you think of the bestiary in Requiem?
This is awkward because it feels like outside of boss fights you get a very paltry sum. You get the zombies, which are interesting, with the lights on and and all that. Those ones with personality are particularly cool. The visuals of the post, bombing raccoon zombies are also, they look gnarly to look at. They have their own, way of lumbering around, but they are just zombies. And the BSAA zombies, unfortunately, are those same zombies, but in BSAA uniforms with machine guns occasionally. Kind of rubbish. And then we've got whatever the frig gets called from The Last of Us, can't remember, big thing. The big lad.
No,
the bloater with, Ouroboros spots on it. Okay, cool. Blistered was all right. It's a V-act process concept because they look like they're not quite liquor heads that have been bursting out with thousands of teeth. So it's clearly a botched thing. I totally appreciate that as a threat because they are all three significant step-up monsters in one. They have the Hunter's Insta-kill attack, they got the visual appearance of the liquor, and they behave a bit like Crimson Heads in their mechanics. So I can appreciate them. Just a shame that that's literally all you get besides lickers. You get lickers, you get zombies, you get the wolves for one chase sequence, and then you get the bosses. It's a paltry appearance. Obviously we can talk about how scary Titan Spinner is for days, but it's a boss, and it's groovy, but you only get one. Plan 43. Yeah. Is it the Plan 43 from RE2 remake that's just about been tried to be ported over and lost in the ether, or I've been looking forward to an infestation that's languished for 30 years. It's not the one I wanted, but I'll accept it. I wanted G Mutants, Capcom, just saying,
Well, when we go back again.
No!
But 4 years.
So unfortunately in this, BOWs were lacking is what I'm saying. I enjoyed them, but besides the gimmick zombies, there's not a lot.
Yeah, I think the zombies in the game, in the first half of the game, are really fun. I really like the sort of Return of the Living Dead style zombies that can talk. If you haven't seen those cheesy B movies from goodness knows how old they are, that's kind of the origin, at least for me, of zombies walking around going, brains, that kind of thing. The lights guy, everyone has shouted him out. The lights guy's hilarious. He might be my favourite. But I've kind of slowed down running through the streets as Leon. And there's a couple there that I don't think you see anywhere else. There's a businessman zombie in a suit who's moaning about going to a meeting or something. I don't think he shows up anywhere else, which is amazing. But what's hilarious about that is that, the game was hey, these zombies have personalities for the first half of the game. Then they kind of don't anymore. It's weird that disappears. Considering as well that in theory they're just the same zombies because they're picking up these bodies from Raccoon to do the blood transfusion stuff. So I don't really understand why they don't have speaky word personalities rather than just I'm dressed like a construction worker or whatever. I don't know, it's odd. But that's not the only thing the game drops. We didn't talk about it, but the whole Leon comes in after Grace and can kill off what she's left, and enemies that she's left in certain rooms will still be there, and items. That only happens once. After Rhodes Hill, they never cross literal paths again. So it's weird that is just a one-time thing, but there you go. I thought the girl was great. Grotesque design, really cool. Definitely had my questions again. I kind of was made peace with the fact that she wasn't Lisa Trevor until I started playing the game, and then I was like, have they actually done it? But I guess not. We haven't talked too much about Chunk, the big guy up on the East Wing who can chase you around. He's very funny. Got a big jump scare and a laugh out of me. He's just a funny guy. And also, if you have the injectors for it, on casual mode, I did a casual run to scoop up the leftover collectibles. He takes 3 injectors in the bum and then he explodes. And the amount of gore, we haven't talked about the amount of gore in this game in general, but goodness me, he just I did him down near the corridor between the OR room and the room where you get the injector, and he just painted the entire corridor red. It was ridiculous. But yeah, I've said about the dog things, it's a shame we don't get more of that. The spider is, of course, goated. And the liquor beta 2s are fine. it's fun to have them fight them in first person, I guess. And I think that they did manage to make them quite imposing and a large number, where in previous games it was either one is scary or there's loads of them, but you've got a machine gun, so don't worry about it. But if you've played Remake 2 enough, then they don't really... they're not that scary because they just function in the same way. So I hadn't really thought about it being lacking. Maybe something extra, like put that in East Raccoon and make it interesting. But yeah, maybe so. I was pretty happy with what we got, though. Kelsey, what do you make of the BOWs in the game?
Well, to give you a sort of an idea of how much fun they were having with this, they, in canon, made one of the zombies, or a couple of them, they labelled them as suffering from main character syndrome, which I thought was absolutely
we talked about those.
Hilarious. The singing zombies were
very memorable,
superb, and I loved them. And the fact they called it main character syndrome was just like, I laughed out loud. That was brilliant. It works within the canon as far as I'm concerned. So they were great, and gave me some trouble as well while I was playing the one in the little back conference room that you need to get the item from as well. And you talked about Chunk. Well, it's actually the Jackson 2. It's Thomas and Timothy. It's because it's Thomas Jackson and Timothy Jackson's brother. They both suffering from the same thing. And I thought the sound design on these guys was so good, maybe the best in the game. And the tight corridor fight with Leon up in the sort of the attic area was really, really cool and sort of a real standout. And I think it might have been in a trailer, but I had not seen any of this guy as well, so it was cool to experience it within the game. And then, yes, as you've mentioned, Spider, the Return of the Spider. The Spider is, to be honest, the only boss that challenged me. Nothing else challenged me from the bosses. They were all quite pedestrian, I thought. And the cutscene of Leon finishing off with the axe was incredible. Really, really good. So, yeah, and then just one final note. I think we can look at this thing of the zombies still behaving and sort of saying the things from their lives. This just ties back into a lot of the theme of the game. They're muttering things from their life, just makes it all the more... Sometimes it's funny, but it is tragic as well. It's like, what happened to these people? And the Requiem theme is back there again. So it's creepy, it's fun, and then there's a couple of Last of Us rip-offs, which you've both mentioned. So, but yeah, love the singers, absolutely. And the guy who hates noise, he can one-shot any other enemy that he comes across, so that's quite fun.
The manager fires the lady he's eating, isn't he? Like, you're fired.
Yeah,
he does.
Fair enough.
Yeah. James, thoughts on enemy composition?
There's one of those zombies that says I can't remember which one it is, but one of the zombies in the care center, when it's coming towards you, says, "I'm sorry."
Yes, yeah.
As it's coming at you, and it's like, really, it actually made me falter for a second.
Yeah, right.
I was like, okay. My highlights are the care center zombies. Every single one of them. The Chunk, Marie, Blisterheads, the chef, all of them. They had their own job. They were so good at their job that they brought it to their death. All slightly different in how they approached you. Incredible amount of care went into designing these guys that I really appreciated and really wished was elsewhere in the game. So everyone in the care center was my favorite zombie, and it was my favorite BOW, and the spider. That's it.
Yeah, that's fair. Cool. Let's talk about the way the game looks. I don't have a lot on this, really. This isn't my expertise, but my general viewpoint is that it's incredible, and I was very much blown away by it. As I said, being invited to the NVIDIA Capcom event to play the game, we got to play the game a little bit on high-powered PCs, RTX 5080 scan computers and all this stuff. It looks ridiculous, especially that opening street section and the darkness and all that stuff. Really, really good. Across the game in general, incredible use of lighting. It was mentioned earlier about the Rhodes Hill Centre. but the red light, the green light, the lightning flashes, the lighter, all of that stuff looked incredible. Glowing in Grace's hair if you're playing in third person. I've seen lots of people complimenting the ray tracing, the path tracing, if you can pull it off. Again, those things are actually not real, and they're all a psyop. Ray tracing isn't real, but but it looks great. Artistically, I feel a little bit like when I got to the water treatment facility, I was kind of glad that it was just like a one and done area. We do the boss and we go, because I was like, oh, it's just another dark area, and the game is a lot of greys and browns. And it does make sense. We talked about Raccoon City. It should look like that. Rhodes Hill probably has the most colour in it because it's got that kind of like sickly green hospital walls and stuff going on. But the colour palette in this game is kind of muted thematically and stuff. And artistically, it does work. But I would like to see maybe a little bit more colour here and there. The character models are incredible. I mean, Leon's grey face fuzz, shout out to that to highlight. All the memes. It's true, Leon is incredibly hot in this game. Let's all face it. But yeah, I mean, really, really impressed. Actually, I guess I will throw in here. I don't think anyone else maybe will have experienced this yet, but I also got the version for Switch 2. So I probably should mention that. I've played a little bit of the opening, basically just the Renwood section. Looks really, really good. Like, I mean, if you had two consoles, you probably aren't going to prioritize playing it on the Switch 2, but if that's your only option, you could do a lot worse. Like, I was genuinely very impressed. It's not always all good. The aliasing around certain things is a bit ropey here and there. It obviously looks better docked than it does handheld, but really impressive. So you could do a lot worse, definitely, and we have done a lot worse in the past. So I probably will be playing 7 Village and Requiem on the Switch 2 at some point, just because it'll be handy to have them wherever I go. They're probably a massive battery drain, but, just having them around with me and having that option is really, really neat. Kelsey, you're a graphics guy. What did you think of Requiem?
Well, the opening cutscene is like you're watching an episode of a TV show. Yeah. Like, it's like you're watching an episode of the X-Files. Like, the character models, some of the best. We've commented on it before with the RE engine, and Capcom does really well here. And the performance, it really comes through. And just right from the start, I was like, I'm here. I'm sucked in. I'm watching an episode of a TV show. And this is not to say it looks photorealistic. It's not about that. It's just about how it is presented, and with those performances and with the lightings and texture and stuff. Because it isn't photorealistic. It's just right. It's what it needs to be. But you mentioned it. There are many places, maybe not enough, where the lighting is incredible, but when it wants to show off, it does it so well. It absolutely does it so well. Often looking down hallways and things like that. It's really, really good. For creating what it's supposed to do, which is create a sense of dread and atmosphere, it just does it over and over again, apart from the sections where we've already kind of complained about. So I was really, really happy with it. I felt like this did feel like progression for the graphics. Like with RE Remake 4, there was parts of that where I thought Remake 3 looked better. And I think I talked about that before. It's like Remake 4 looked good, but it had some ropey issues, particularly with the hair and the character models. And it felt like basically all of that was gone here, and it had a much better polish to it on the whole. I really like the use of the Alan Wake title cards on the screen as well, which was good, where it said where they were. I mean, that's the sort of thing that's been going on for a few years in movies and TV, so they used it here as well. The detail is fantastic. There is obviously a big question to be had about how a lot of this was produced, and I do think in future we're probably going to follow up with maybe an extended chat about that, because Capcom have talked about experimenting with generative AI, which you touched on at the top of the podcast site, and I'm not going to really sort of have a big conversation about it here, but I know, and some of us have spoken before we started recording, that there's a couple of points in this game where there's some details in the background that don't make sense, and that's a shame to see, because Capcom are pretty damn good at generally pulling off the detail and making it all make sense, and some of it doesn't in this, but I don't want to put too much of a dampener on it because I don't think this game is created in a massive way with generative AI. I think there's a lot of stuff that has been purposefully built here, and you can see that because it does so well at fitting within the world and stuff like that. But I do think we're going to talk about that more in future. But generally,
possibly.
Yeah, in terms of how it looks, it's one of the best that they've done. And I can barely fault it, really. I had a couple of very minor glitches and some sort of, like you mentioned, that aliasing. And like when the lift was going down in the office room, it sort of was fuzzing everywhere. But, you know, I don't care. It doesn't really matter, because it's a video game and this happens sometimes. And they've patched it already once as well. Yeah. So I'm not going to whinge because this... I talked about it being my Resident Evil at the start, and a lot of it is because of that. I think it does so well in giving most of the areas in the game their own character and their own vibe. So really, really pleased with how this game looks.
In terms of the graphical step up, of course, it is worth mentioning that this is the first game in the series that has released exclusively on current gen hardware. When it comes to console games, Remake 4 did get released for PlayStation 4 and Xbox One as well, whereas this has not. So, yeah. And obviously, it's been 3 years, so you would hope so. I agree with that. James, thoughts on presentation?
This game is the pinnacle of Resident Evil in terms of its visuals. We are at 7 years of the RE engine now.
You are 9.
Not
10 or 9, yeah.
Is it?
RE7 was 20. Yeah, RE7 was 2017.
Oh, right. RE7 was RE engine. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going off Remake 2 for some reason. So, almost decade. And it is starting to show some of its age, like hair physics not reacting to gravity in the best way sometimes. It has to be hard baked in. Like you see it, like an example is Grace being, I know they were very proud of it, and you can be very proud. It looks great. But it was clearly baked in when she was upside down on that stretcher, and it's like they're very proud of that hair, and it's like, her hair doesn't work like that though when she's actually upside down and being thrown through the corridor.
Just the thing about that, actually, since you reminded me, what's funny about that is I saw a compliment the other day where it was like, if you complete the game with Leon in the noir costume, he's not wearing gloves. So when he takes his glove off at the end to reveal that his Raccoon City syndrome is gone, that cutscene is different because he doesn't have gloves. He just looks at his hand. The thing about that is, that's cool and all. And also, while we're here, depending on what side you approach the RPD main hall, the cutscene is slightly different if you go around the left or the right of the hallway, which is neat. However, if you are playing as Grace and hanging upside down in her noir costume, she has hoop earrings that stand perfectly upright despite the fact she's upside down. So I thought that was funny. It's silly. It's like, it's alternate costume stuff, so it doesn't matter, but I thought it was funny. Sorry, do go on.
It's like the alligator snapper being in every single cutscene, despite that gun being the worst gun in the game. Yeah. Yeah,
in the box it goes.
But yeah,
I used it to the end.
The classic run I did, I tried to use every classic gun, like the first gun you get, and the only gun that was worth a damn was the GAL, the GAL. To go on, certain parts of this game, they do struggle in similar ways to how Village did with its DRM, specifically in the East Raccoon City. And I'm speaking from the experience of the PC, from the PC market. So, we had some issues with zooming in, or when things got very close to you, or when you were scoping, the game would have momentary lag. We called it lag flies because it used to lag when the daughters would come at you.
Of course,
you would see that in East Raccoon City. And I think that's literally because the RE engine is not made for big environments, and that is a huge environment. You saw it in Monster Hunter Rise, and you saw it in Monster Hunter Wilds. They're still dealing with awful optimization because RE engine is just not built for big environments. But other than that stuff, overall the game performed really well and looked incredible. I was playing it at 4K 120. Everything was on. The game looked so good. that we had this discussion in admin. I really wanted to put it up on YouTube at 4K 120. But we don't have the storage options because I mean, I don't know if you guys know, but 4K 120, they're huge files, guys. The raw files are massive. They're even bigger than the game itself. Especially at 2 hours a pop. But yeah, graphics, they looked amazing. Yeah, as Kel said earlier as well, like if you have these resolutions, either you had 1080p to be honest, and you start looking too deeply into some of the text that's on whiteboards and on notice boards and on bulletin boards, none of it makes sense. It all looks like runes. And I really would have liked some more detail like you got in Alan Wake 2, where you could literally zoom in on anything and you can see detail. But I have my own theories about why that was done. And it just seems lazy because they're normally quite good with details like that. It just, for folks like us who like to explore an environment, I just would have liked a reward like that.
I love when people rip the game files as well, and we see the text that you don't necessarily see in game. We don't really get that from the RE Engine stuff, though. This has actually just been something, I think, since probably 7, where a lot of the like signage and stuff is just scrawly nonsense and not text in general, which is a shame. But it was probably noticeably even fuzzier in Requiem, I thought, but there you go. On the last sort of side of presentation then, before we start to wrap this thing up, let's talk about music, audio in general, sound effects, voice acting, that kind of thing. Steve, what's your take on this side?
I want to say,
I absolutely apologise. Do the whole lot.
It's good though, because on the presentation side of things, I feel like this is obviously the strongest to date. They've had that much time with the engine. The lighting is like probably they have worked around light and shadow so strongly in this game that it cannot be understated how terrifying it can be just walking through a corridor in the dark with the humble light bouncing around the edges of the corridor. Genuinely tense stuff, and in the exterior scenes as well. I might dislike East Raccoon City for being a bit monochromatic and grey, but visually very detailed, very stunning animations of the monsters and things, especially the reload animations on all of you. The finite details cannot be understated. Yeah. They went to town with the nerd stuff on the gun stuff.
Mm-hmm. Putting the torch up by your neck while you reload was a great touch for me as well.
Leon chucking one shell in the barrel and hot shoulder loading it. I think that's a John Wick thing. All that stuff, funky. Loved it. Great. Musically, one of the stronger ones for me. Especially when it gets they know how to do the tension music and their action music in this one. I feel like the throwback track's obviously nice, but there's the album, the Burst Their Heads, has already been put to use on other things. It's that's the Doom music for when Leon's fighting Blizzheads for the first time. It's straight up there. There is some real strong banger tracks in this. Honestly, I'm hoping for some more bonus modes, because then if they can do funky stuff like that in the regular game, hopefully it'll be even funkier in the Mercenaries or the ghostlier Survivors or whatever. I am excited because the composer team. There's the whole different set, and the name eludes me. But look up the soundtrack on your various streaming sources, because it's pretty dope. Also, shout out to the end theme, really uplifting for what it was. Thought it was more charming than Village of Dark Shadows. Probably doesn't top Go Tell Aunt Rhody though for me. That's still the creepiest.
I need to spend some more time with the end credits theme. It hasn't landed with me yet, but I'm a big fan of the not Bjork Village of Shadows from Resident Evil Village. For me, on the audio front, weapon sound effects great, monster sound effects great. Voice acting overall is always great. This one in particular, really, really good. I won't talk about music for content-related reasons. James, what do you think of the audio in the game?
Sorry. So standout music for me was Leon, his Leon sections, especially when you were when there was an alert for when you were seen. Another a highlight of mine was the helicopter, the scene after the helicopter crash when you're sniping for Grace. and Leon is doing his best Ada Wong impression. But yeah, all of the stuff during the city scenes as well. The cues for audio piping up when you were spotted, it worked really well with Grace as well. The weapons, the BOWs, the Foley used was incredible, really unique as well. I struggled, though, to tell the difference between an active Blisterhead and zombie sometimes. However, the activation of Blisterhead was undeniable. Like when it when it started its thing, but like I had trouble identifying them both, and that's probably intentional. But yeah, and I'd have to go visually have a look at them to see who they were. But yeah, who knows? Yeah, really loved the music, specifically Leon's. But yeah, but again, nice. Like Capcom always do so well with sound.
For sure. Kelsey, thoughts on music, sound effects, voice acting?
Isn't it funny that Resident Evil, a game infamous for starting with probably the worst voice acting ever in any video games, and how far we have come? Because for a long time now, and this just solidifies it again, I mean, you don't get much better in video games. Yes, there's some other sort of cinematic and story-driven games out there that do fantastic voice acting that are on the same level as well. This is up there with the best. The performances in this are so good. They're so good. And that, if it wasn't for those good performances, I might like this game a lot less because of the other issues we have with it as well. It's a joy to play, to hear them perform, even if the story is kind of dumb. So yeah, huge shout out to the voice work on this game. Like, I love it. It's really, really good. And yes, sound effects and stuff you've covered. I spent yesterday listening to the soundtrack as well. And while there's some sort of more forgettable tracks, there's some that are incredible as well. And the sort of zombie combat music that comes in that's got what sounds like groans in it are so good. And, you know, it's sort of all this synthy stuff. There's a lot of grindhousey, retro, B-movie sort of stabs and synths in there as well, littered around the soundtrack, in contrast to the very modern pop song stuff that's in there as well. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to diving into the soundtrack more in future because there's a lot to say there. And nothing too much to say on the new save room theme. It was okay. I liked it. It's definitely not the worst, but yeah, just thinking about the presentation and how the game sounds, you can't complain. They put a lot of time, money and effort into it, and it shows. So yeah, big thumbs up on how it sounds.
Cool. Well, let's do it then. What is our conclusion? Individual conclusions, collective conclusions on Resident Evil Requiem. Steve, let's start with you. What are your final thoughts? At least, I say final thoughts. We're only a week after release, but how are you feeling about Requiem?
Like 56 hours in. So I've had a bit of playtime. Right. As a fan of even Ethan Winters and Seven and Village, I can safely say this is probably the best new entry Resident Evil since probably 4 for me. Like, you know, there's a lot of narrative issues I have laid with it, and there are retcons, there are struggles to get with, but there is a lot of right here that I feel like I've bashed a lot of it, but mechanically and aesthetically, there's a lot that I enjoy about this game to keep coming back. And the character work as well, like especially with, like, you know, Leon, Grace, Victor Gideon, like I cannot understate how fun he is. Like, you know, as we've had rubbish villain after rubbish villain, and now here's this completely ridiculous man with goggles, and I'm just like swooning for him. Like, please, Capcom, don't waste him. Like, make it so that Nemesis was just something else and he just walked away. I don't care. You know, you brought Wesker back. You know, but please, don't understate. I absolutely despise Hound Wolf Squad. No, right, okay. No, Requiem is by no means a perfect Resident Evil game. It tries to wear too many hats at once. It's trying to please everybody. But as an anniversary thing, as a thing trying to do a bit for everybody, I appreciate the effort regardless. You know, Divorced Zombie as well. Shout out to Ed Kinnell. I know they love that guy. So there is a lot of fun stuff to be had here. If you're even just a casual Resident Evil fan who's lapsed, if you're a lorehead who doesn't mind massaging a few facts and truths, you'll enjoy a lot here. If you're a big Wesker simp, though, you're probably going to be upset, and that makes me even happier.
Kelsey, final thoughts, at least so far, on Resident Evil Requiem.
Yeah, I mean, so we've been going 4.5 hours, but it will not be the last time we talk about this game.
No.
There's so much to say. There's tons we haven't covered. But for me, I've been on a journey just in the past week since it came out with this game. I've gone from absolutely loving it to really disliking large aspects of it to even feeling kind of insulted by it a couple of times, like, you know, the fake bad ending and stuff like that. But you know, after a lot of thinking, I can happily and easily arrive at the fact that it has enough going for it, more than enough going for it, that makes it one of the best games of the series, in spite of its issues, certainly as a game to play. The production quality is incredible, and I think in this funny time we live in of video games, this as a single player AAA experience, I don't know what more you could ask for, really. It's not bloated. It doesn't have loads of technical problems. You know, there's no microtransactions in the game. Like, it's just, this is quintessentially a classic video game presentation that I want, and it feels first class in lots of ways, and it's the kind of thing that I'm begging for these days, and clearly lots of people are, because it's done very, very well. I think for most players it will absolutely be a standout entry in the series, as is reflected in the reviews. And like I said earlier, I think, you know, there are Resident Evil fans of all kinds, of all shapes and sizes, and with all kinds of investments. And I think you can be a pretty hardcore Resident Evil fan that's played them all and maybe played some of them many times, and you'll play this, and yes, and you might even call it a masterpiece and think it's in the top 3 or top 2. I've seen people saying that, people that I know are really into video games, and I respect their opinion. They're like, yeah, this might be the best one ever, or it's certainly top 2. It's not up there for me. I think it's, for my position as a fan, it does a lot right, but then it's got a lot of sticking points for me. And I think some of the story decisions just raise too many questions. I feel perhaps it's possibly overstuffed with fan service that makes it feel a bit shallow. And I'm not against fan service. This is a thing sometimes that it can feel like, oh, it's just fan service. I want fan service, but it's got to be done right. And then, of course, there is a big section of the game that I think drags a lot. And really, you know, if we're giving it out of 10 stars, the Raccoon City section it knocks at least a whole star off of it for me. So, but like, even with those criticisms, I think what it sets out to do is really impressive, even if it loses sight of it a little bit, and it kind of unravels. And I had a great experience with it, and will continue to do so. I think if you're going to jump into the series, it's probably not the best starting point, because you want a load of context that is given to you by games like 2 and 4 and 7 and even Village. So maybe go and play them first, and then come and play Requiem, and you'll probably have an absolute blast. So for general fans and casual, I don't mean casual as a way to undermine your enjoyment of this game. For general audiences, I can see why it's doing so well, and I can see why it is in Game of the Year conversations. For me, yeah, it raises a few eyebrows, and I'm still thinking about it and going to keep thinking about it. But yeah, loads of fun. I think it does more right than it does wrong, and that's about as much as you can ask for. So looking forward to continue to talk about it in future in lots of different ways. A week out from the game coming out, I am a big fan of it. Absolutely.
Nice. James, your conclusion, please, for Resident Evil Requiem.
So the first half of this game were the best parts of this game. The unknown, the potential promise of answers, and although we got some answers by the end, I don't think they were sufficient for me. By the time it finished, I was left wanting more. Like, the connections were never really properly linked. The bosses were anticlimactic after you left Raccoon City. The substance that we normally get in files or the clear ideas that we normally get in a villain's monologue were gone in this game mostly, though we got them from Gideon. This may be something that could be expanded further on in the future, but personally, I think this is an element of generative AI. I wasn't going to take part in this podcast initially because of the news of Capcom using Gen AI, but I played the game and prepared for the podcast to highlight these issues. The context and nuance was gone for a majority of the story, and Capcom have not done enough to put our minds at rest of its inclusion of Gen AI in its development after admitting to using it early last year. I do think the majority of this game was created without it, but the creative way that the story presented itself is something we shouldn't ignore as a community. I agree with everybody here about all of its pluses. I really do. But we really need an answer from Capcom when it comes to this kind of stuff, because I'm going to forever be wondering, is this Gen AI? And I really don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, very well said. I think very importantly said as well. And I kind of echo that statement. Well, I don't know if I personally believe that the story was written with Gen AI or anything like that. I can completely get that point of view because it just smacks of like, here's a bunch of Resident Evil terms and stuff.
Yes.
Like it, and that is the thing with the story for me in general. If it's not generative AI, it feels like someone wrote a really comprehensive treatment for a story, handed it off to the actual team that makes the game, and they just took out the chunks that excited them and didn't bother to explain the rest. The story in this game is very well presented. Codswallop is my problem with it. It's just nonsense. It's just nonsense, and I want questions in the series, definitely, but the lack of context to everything, not even wider franchise stuff, just elsewhere in the game, and the ability to weasel out of it that Capcom have left themselves really left me feeling quite blue about this game in sort of the midpoint of this week. And Kelsey, like you, I've kind of gone through the whole stages of being really happy with it, not so happy with it. I'm coming back around on whatever, and I guess we'll see over time where we land with it. I'm trying not to let it colour my whole experience, but it's definitely a factor because we've been waiting since, Revelations 2, for a continuation of the main series story arc. I liked Seven and Village as a cool diversion, but to pick up some stuff from there, I do think it does some great things with Raccoon City and the connections and the government. I've been asking for that for so long, but it's all been left cowardly loose with things like Hunk and Xeno and stuff. It feels like they've avoided giving context so that they can see what people say and then pick an answer rather than commit to something, which is, it's cowardly. But with that issue out of the way, I did think that the game is thoroughly enjoyable to play. I've played through it twice. I'll have done 3 or 4 runs if it wasn't for Pokemon Pokopia coming out and stuff like that. I am itching to get back to it. Well, Pokopia is so good, but I will get back to it. Does it do... This is not a Pokopia podcast, I promise. Does Requiem do anything new? I don't think it does, but I think it's a great summation of what the RE Engine era has produced for the last 9 years. And as I said earlier, it's almost a dead cert that we just get this kind of format moving forward. And I don't think that's a bad thing. They are trying to scratch all the itches, and this is the closest they've got to actually pulling that off. I think people are really enjoying the Leon action stuff, even if us here as a group collectively generally preferred Grace's stuff more. I gotta wonder if there's a shake-up on the horizon, though, because you can't just have here's everything you like in one game over and over again. Otherwise, the balance is going to go wrong and, panic will set in. I think my closing thought, though, is that this is the biggest game in the series now. Like, sales-wise, review-wise, the hype around it, people talking about it before release, following release. We've had it before where Resident Evil games have been, snubbed from award ceremony because they tend to release at the beginning of the year now. I don't think that's going to happen with Requiem. I think it's going to be part of that conversation towards the end of the year. It might well win some awards depending on what does wind up coming out this year, which is great. But most excitingly about that for me is that this is an original tale that has all that plaudits. Fan service, callbacks, all of that stuff. People turned up because it's the new entry in the Resident Evil series, not just a remake. And hopefully this means the balance shift we do see, not the horror and the action kind, but the remake and the original stories kind has maybe changed a little bit behind the scenes, and Capcom kind of addressed the fact that People are turning up for new stories. We don't need to remake every game under the sun. People will buy Revelations 3 or something like that. So this gives me hope for the future of the series, even if I thought the story was codswallop. It does feel like the success of an original story might address the problems that some of us have with too many remakes. But nothing else remains for me but to thank the panel, our contributors, and our community. Join us on the First Aid Spray Discord server to hear the show early and check out our merchandise store or our Patreon to support the show. Don't forget that these and all of our social media links can be found at faspraypod.com. You can listen to the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all good podcasting apps. And if you like what you hear, please do leave us a review where you can and spread the good word. In our next episode, as I said at the top of the show, we'll be celebrating 30 years of Resident Evil with your opinions as we hold the first and probably only ever edition of the First Aid Spray Awards show known as the Rezzies. Again, you can vote now down in the form in the description of this podcast, wherever you're listening to it. Thank you to the panel. You can follow the Playboy people on social media. We're all on Blue Sky now. I'm at Cy White. Steve is at FB Steve. James is at Moist Owlet OFF. And Kelsey is at KDB-init. And finally, thank you for listening and have a good week.
This game is Revelations 3, right? Isn't that
this
like
feels like more
thing?
Revelations than Requiems. There's more Revelations in this than there is Revelations in the Revelations 1 and 2.
Requelations.
Because it sort of picks up some Revelation stuff. I think there's a feeling that this could have been a Rev 3.
I ended up having to just bin my notes off at the end. I'm sure we could all tell, but still.
No, it's good. That was good. This is going to be a hell to edit tomorrow morning.
Well done, folks. Well done.
Well done,
Apologise for swearing. It's just, I needed to emphasise the point.
It's funny.
The Wolf Squad, they bring it out in you.
You know when you just have to emphasise a point and one is not enough? Just,
It was necessary.
Oh dear.